be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus came down with the 12 and stood on a stretch of level ground with a great crowd of his disciples and a large number of the people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon. And raising his eyes towards his disciples, he said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for the kingdom of God is yours. Blessed are you who are now hungry, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who are now weeping, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you and insult you, and denounce your name as evil on account of Son of Man. Rejoice and leap for joy on that day. Behold, your reward will be great in heaven, for their ancestors treated the prophets in the same way. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are filled now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you for who laugh now, for you will grieve and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for their ancestors treated the false prophets in this way." The Gospel of the Lord.
This is the second in our series of Divine Renovation homilies, in which I seek to lay out for you what Divine Renovation really is all about, since it obviously is going to affect your lives. Hopefully, it's going to affect your lives more than you maybe intend or will or even think about. The key to regaining a sense of our purpose as a parish is to claim our identity. What does it mean to be a parish? What does it mean to be a church? We have to come to grips with the crises that face the church today, and they are many. Our biggest crisis, I think, is we have forgotten who we are and what God is calling us to be as church. Our identity crisis in our church today is not unlike the one that existed in the time of Jesus. It said that we are not so much a church of Christ that has a mission, but a mission of Christ that has a church. So it's Jesus' intention that has us. That's why we are a church, because Jesus has plans for us, something for us to do, not simply to negatively or sort of unpositively be just here. We, however, have often forgotten our essential missionary calling and contented ourselves with maintenance, serving ourselves. As I laid out all those figures last week about 40, 50 years ago, when there were 8,000 people, mostly coming to church, 200 baptisms, 38 weddings, the priest probably had more than enough to do without going out looking for more people. As a result, they probably didn't. But imagine how the church grew from 11 disciples, zealots, tax collectors, into 2.2 billion people. It sure wasn't Jesus died and rose from the dead and defeated sin and has won for us a place with him and eternally in heaven. But for God's sake, don't tell anybody about it. Shh. They shouted it from the housetops. Word spread like wildfire. When we humans find something good and wonderful, we spread it. It had to have happened that way. It never could happen the way things are in the church today. It would have died out within a generation or less. So the church exists for the sake of mission. That's in the mind of Jesus, and so it has to be in our mind too if we are to do his will. This call to mission has been asserted by popes and theologians for almost 60 years now, starting essentially with Pope St. Paul VI, who in his encyclical Evangelii Nunciandi called for a great evangelization effort in the church. But most Catholics perceive mission as something a select few people carry out in faraway places. But we're crippled by a culture of maintenance, and we focus on what we need to do to focus the needs of parishioners, just a service ministry. When you need something, we do it for you. But we have to see we all have responsibility to minister to one another. How much richer and fuller the ministry becomes when we all see ourselves as ministers in some way. But it's not our fault. I'm not trying to put the guilt trip on you, because that's just the way the church has functioned, probably now for hundreds or 1,000 years. We did make converts, but not too many. Each year, we barely get anybody that joins the church, except people that transfer from another parish. That is really shameful. We have to all put our bag on our head for that one. We don't bring anybody into the church. 1, 2, 3 people. So that's pretty embarrassing. So we've gotten so much into this maintenance mode, it's hard for us to get out of it. So it's hard to get out of a rut that someone has stuck us into. If we love the church and love Jesus the head, we have to make some effort to see what each one of us, in some small way at least, can do to get ourselves out of it. We know from studying, going to Catholic school and CCD and all that, we've always had missionaries going out to China and Japan, Near East and Far East, preaching the gospel, sometimes dying for it. But we forgot to send missionaries to Latrobe and Derry and Unity Township. There are unsaved people there too. People who have died without Jesus. People who have died without going to heaven. It's sad, but we have to do something about it. Like Israel at the time of Jesus, we become robbers of the people God has sent us to reach, that his salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. We all know about the Titanic. I'm going to draw a little parallel here between the Titanic, of course, was the great unsinkable ship, constructed in such a way it could simply never sink. And so it had a double hull, so if it did strike something and the hull was breached, the water would just go into the single hull, the outer one, and some water would get in there, but it would be safe. It sunk in 1912 off the coast of Halifax, Nova Scotia, a little bit considerably south. Now, there were lifeboats on the boat, of course, because you had to have lifeboats. Even though it was unsinkable, you had to make people feel comfortable, just in case. Well, of course, all this happened rather quickly. Then they got the lifeboats out and started to fill them. And when they got them all filled, they were all out in the water. They figured 472 unused places on the lifeboats. People were still somewhere in the water who should have been in the lifeboats. Before it finally sank, 1,500 people floundered in the water, with the lifeboats safely on the perimeter, looking in at it as they saw the ship go down to the bottom of the Atlantic. They watched at a safe distance. Only, say, 5 boats finally came back in to search for survivors. The first-class passengers, corporation presidents, countesses, counts, all sorts of wealthy people were incensed at the inconvenience of it all. Well, by the time those in the lifeboats recalled their purpose, lifeboats, and decided to go back in to see if perhaps anybody had survived, they did find 9 people still alive, and 3 of them died of hypothermia anyway. So this is, I think, a metaphor for the church, very easily. Like Jesus, we have been sent to seek and save the lost. Here in our lifeboat, we have been called to seek those who are perishing when there are plenty of seats available in the lifeboat. This isn't the only lifeboat in town, but it's a big one, and there's many, many spaces here in the lifeboat where we could fit many people. Why wouldn't we? Remember that you have to be a member of God's church. You have to be part of his people in order to merit in the end eternal life. Yet so often we sit in our lifeboats at a safe distance, looking on, concerned with our own needs and comfort rather than the needs of those who need salvation. New Life theology, New Age, says everybody goes to heaven. Well, read the words of Jesus and we'll see that's patent nonsense. Would that it were true. We don't rejoice in anybody not going to heaven. but we know that it happens more than we like to think, and we don't want to even think about it, do we? We don't. We like to think the New Age theology, which is not theology at all. Perhaps if some people swam over to our boat and said, please take us in, we would certainly do it. We see the kindness of people when tragedy strikes. People go, they bring things, they help people. But for us to go out and to search for people that need us, it's not too likely that's going to happen. But I know a lot of you are trying to do that, trying to change the patterns of your life, and try to be more what God's calling you to be. But sometimes it's so outside our frame of reference because we have so thoroughly forgotten our identity or really never even knew it. Who knew we were supposed to be doing this? Who knew we were supposed to be going out and spreading our faith? And let's face it, we live in a big society. We know that in many churches, that's what people do sometimes to the point of being obnoxious. All these new churches you see rising up, that's their mantle, what's the word I want to use? Their mantra. Come and be saved. Come to our church. Be welcomed. And Catholics leave in droves to go off to receive something that is true, but only partially true. Leaving behind the sacraments, the Eucharist, all the things that are really important. So lifeboats exist to rescue people. So does the church. We lament the tragedy of the loss of faith, secularizations, church closings, total disrespect for human life, and so on, but it never occurs to us to pick up an oar and row, to do something to correct the problem. We've seen in the news in recent weeks the big flap about the governor of Virginia at some point in his life putting on blackface for whatever reason, I don't know. And so there's been a big flap calling for his resignation. But on the other hand, at the same time, almost at the identical time, he had just signed a bill to make abortion legal up to the 9th month. And even if somehow the child was managed to be born to get out of the death the doctor was about to give it, then the mother and the doctor, this is so monstrous. Blackface is like nothing. The mother and the doctor will have a conference to decide whether or not to kill the child. What happens to a nation already that kills their children by the millions when we're so hard-hearted that we kill them outright, sitting right in front of us and kill them? Same thing in New York. Governor Cuomo couldn't wait till he got a Democratic Senate so they would pass this, and they all applauded. Yay! We get to kill children now. And this will make us a great and wonderful nation, a great state, and he's supposedly a Catholic. This is what I'm inviting you to do by becoming a Divine Renovation parish, standing up for what is right, because our relationship with Christ is more important than any relationship, any membership we have in all the world. A parish that cherishes the salvation that Jesus has won for us and is dedicated to sharing it with all of us that we can. Isn't it exciting to think about belonging to an active parish, a missional parish, rather than one that goes through the motions of church? Isn't that why we've lost all of our young people? We're just doing the same old, same old. We don't call for the truth. Let's really be alive in Christ and change the world. That's really my challenge, my mission. And of course, you've heard it before. You've been hearing it for years, but sometimes it didn't really change. So I have another little quote. This is a quote from John Kennedy. He said, there are risks and costs in a program of action, but they are far less than the long-range risks and costs of comfortable inaction. So we take a risk by acting, but we take a worse risk by doing nothing, doing the same old, same old. Anyway, we talked last week about going to Baltimore, the 13 of us. And when we got back from Baltimore, then we wanted to sit down and decide whether we liked what we heard and whether it be something that would work for us. And so the 13 came together with about another dozen or so, and we met week after week after week after week for like 3 months, from February to April, talking about the possibility of this, what it meant for us, what it meant for all of us, how it would really help the parish. We took a sort of an attitudinal survey called Strength Finders, in which we try to find out our strengths, the way we come at a problem. Now, they're not what you think, and so I'm not sure even though these make any sense to you, but belief, adaptability, strategy, self-assurance, arranger, responsibility. When you see a problem and you get 10 people around the table, if they all think alike, you don't think deeply. But if they all have different ways at shooting at the problem, you're going to come up with a better solution. So that's what we did. And so in the end, my goal was to name a senior leadership team. That was to look at these 25 people, first of all, asking who was available to make the time commitment, because it is considerable, and then looking at their strengths, so we had a well-rounded team, and eventually I ended up appointing the strategic leadership team. Now, we've been meeting since last April, almost every week, week after week after week after week. There are 8 members. Almost 8 members. Come Friday, when Vince gets here as Director of Discipleship and Stewardship, he'll become the 8th member. 4 staff, because we need them. They have the expertise, plus 4 members of the parish. We also receive coaching from the Divine Renovation Network through Skype, Zoom, talking to them about what we're doing and receiving advice and guidance from them as to whether we're going in the right direction, so we don't waste a whole lot of time going off in some tangent somewhere that we have to try to then correct it as we move backwards. Also, it's called a cohort. I'm in the blue cohort, which is a group of priests with Father James Mallon, in which we talk to him about what we're doing and get some of his advice and his feedback. So in last June, Ryan Coyne, our Director of Evangelization, Chris Pujol, our seminarian, and myself went to Halifax to the Divine Renovation Network conference. There were like 650 people there from all over the world. It was simultaneously being translated into French and German. There were like 135 priests there, so it tells you this is not some flash in the pan. This has been something that's been going on for years, and people are deeply dedicated to it because they see it changing and transforming their lives. So while there were major presentations, there were also some small group discussions. And so this is the important thing. Getting back to the senior, I knew I missed something there. With the senior leadership team, the way that works now is, in a sense, I've ceded my authority given to me by the bishop to rule and guide the parish. I share that with them. They have permission to yell at me, scream at me, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm totally out of the world, off the trolley somewhere, and I have to listen to them. And hopefully together, looking at these questions, problems, in different ways, we come up with the best solution. It gives greater transparency to the parish so that we know we're hopefully going in the right direction. I value their counsel, and they give me good counsel, and I give them my counsel, and hopefully we're listening to one another. This last Tuesday, we began, in a sense, the first action that really affects the parish, and that's Alpha. We had 100 people present downstairs, to begin the process. So Alpha is really our starting point. It intends to educate and to ignite our parishioners so they become more involved in the work of spreading the gospel. It sparks something within them. I said before, it's hard to put your finger on it. What happens? Suddenly something comes alive within us. And we become more involved in spreading the gospel in the parish to those who have fallen away, to those who have no faith at all. And there are many, many people who have no faith. You'd be surprised. We sort of think everybody knows what Christianity is about. Everybody knows about. No. It's surprising to find out that people don't even know what's available. Again, that's kind of embarrassing because we're so private. We have this bag on our head. We don't want to tell anybody about Jesus unless people think we're religious. Oh, God forbid that people think we're religious. And so my hope would be that all of you, yes, all of you, would somewhere along the line go through Alpha and allow Christ to spark a spark of His Spirit within your life so you too could go out and spread the gospel message, so that we'd have to add 3 more masses because the place would be bursting at the seams, and the Spirit and the power of God would be filling us and filling all that we meet. Alpha is the first letter of the Greek alphabet. And so Alpha is a beginning for all of us. And so hopefully you're going to be part of the question, part of the problem. So together with Christ's help and strength, we can allow a new beginning in each one of us.